I had to be lifted up by the armpits to peer inside. The brick facade appeared to be cut from a single sheet, but if you looked closely, you could see how my father had smeared cement onto miniature bricks with a butter knife. The townhouse was electric, too, modeled after its 1920s counterpart and outfitted with stained glass lamps and micro editions of Moby Dick and Jane Eyre. There were even lights on the outside, brass sconces that framed the doorway and cast shadows on the perennially green hedges below. The house I grew up in is not like this. It's compact and boxy, built on a cement slab and encased in vinyl siding. On the Tim Burton sliding architectural scale, it's less Beetlejuice and more Edward Scissorhands. Ours is one of 2 model homes on the street. It's as if an architect approached the neighborhood the way you approach a child at mealtime. You're not supposed to ask a child to conjure an ideal dinner out of thin air. You're supposed to say, chicken or spaghetti, or all hell breaks loose. The neighborhood itself is shaped like a ladle with 4 lines of streets cutting across the middle and one long one which bends before merging into some woods. My parents live in the soup, surrounded by neighbors making an effort with koi ponds. My whole life, my parents refused to do the decent thing and pretend they couldn't hear every step I took. I have never been trapped in a bunker or a submarine, but I have to assume there's an understanding in these situations. These people would never survive. If I picked up the phone in the kitchen, my father's voice would come booming from the basement, asking who I was calling. If I unfolded a blanket in the den, my mother would shout down from the top floor, offering me another one. If I passed their bedroom door, they would demand to know what I was up to. Seems harmless enough, until you know that the only room after theirs was the bathroom. Thus the townhouse became my platonic ideal of a house. It was always grand and peaceful. It stood in the corner of the living room, covered with a tarp like a bird cage. Light from the television would be visible to any tiny people living inside. They would be able to hear my parents' cries of, "What are you watching?" as I changed the channel. But there were no tiny people beneath the tarp, no eyes to see or ears to hear. No one to tell me that I would one day live in Manhattan, where if someone follows you around, asking you who you're calling, you can have that person arrested. A couple of decades later, I was living in a railroad apartment in Chelsea, illegally subletting it from a friend's sister. The sister lived in Los Angeles, and I never met her, despite repeated offers to meet whenever I happened to be in Los Angeles. This was for her benefit, not mine. If it were me, I'd want to vet me. But I never heard back from her. I never heard from her at all, actually. One time the peephole fell out, a thing I did not realize peepholes could do, just dislodge themselves and come thudding onto the floor like a car part. I wrote her explaining what had happened. No response. Eventually, I taped the receipt for a new peephole to my reduced rent check, which she cashed without a, well, you know. The second I saw her name appear on my phone, I knew I was getting evicted. Not wanting to stray too far from home, I paid a broker to find me a place nearby. In the easiest gig of that guy's already unchallenging career, we walked 9 blocks south to a pre-war building, the kind with a name engraved above the awning, but none of the residents could tell you what it is. The broker unlocked the door to a 600-square-foot one-bedroom on the 2nd floor that had been recently occupied by a boy. The clothes pole in the closet was missing. But the moldings were thick enough to double as bookshelves, and the view was unreal. Dogwood trees shaded a row of the private backyards of townhouses. Cherry blossom detritus drizzled in the wind. A blue jay landed on the fire escape. It was the first apartment I saw. I could barely afford it, and I took it immediately. The West Village is a ridiculous place to call home. People with unseemly bank accounts spend thousands of dollars freshening the flower pots on their stoops. Rose bushes, hydrangeas, pansies, and zinnias, all casually exposed to marauding vagrants. Except there are no vagrants, not even marauding ones. It's a generationally diverse area, but otherwise it's as removed from reality as a movie set. Celebrities' kids skip along the pavement, backpacks twice their size bobbing up and down. One of the houses visible from my apartment is owned by an elderly couple. The woman likes to tell guests how Hilary Swank used to climb a fence and exit through their house in order to avoid the paparazzi. Down the block and around the clock, people take photos of the facade of Carrie Bradshaw's apartment in Sex and the City. Submitting to their fate, the real owners have installed a donation box on behalf of a local animal shelter for every photo taken. These tourists